Cloud9 side is already such a formidable jungler here in NA, but Contractz being a leader and making such a difference in the early game when he is completely unlocked. But Cloud9 definitely trying to shut that down a bit with the way they were taking those bans, and now getting into the lock-in of the draft. It's a Varus first for C9.
Like this pick for C9, they've made their name kind of on aggressive bot lanes. They've had the Kallistas, the Varuses. You saw in that kind of last week with the tiebreaker game, breaking out the Draven. Absolutely disgusting performance out of Berserker. They can flex this Varus pick between both Zven and Berserker to see exactly what the matchup's going to be. And it's something that makes C9's bot lane so dangerous. Berserker was #1 in CSD, of course, across the entire split for bot lane.
And even when looking at this past All-Pro, right, and Berserker maintaining that #1 spot, there were not necessarily doubters of him, but those that were hyping up some of the opposition within the league with all of the, Prince talk. But
it was a very close battle between the two of them. I think a lot of people's minds were swayed with that final game. I will admit that worked for me. You watch a 10-kill Draven, whatever it ended up being, you're like, all right, he's pretty good. But it was a very interesting battle between the two of them. And they clinched that one out, and now it'll be on Berserker to kind of continue that domination against Luger and Poome. Have quietly had a very good split themselves. I think a lot of the CLG guys went under the radar for the majority of the split. You heard us kind of talking about there because they just look so doomed, and it was a very close finish, but they ripped off 3 in a row to finish in the top half of the bracket out of nowhere.
And multiple CLG members acknowledging across several interviews that they recognize that sweetness, not just with them, but the rest of the squad. We're getting kind of a two-faced pick here.
The Jayce pick for C9 fans. You don't know if you love it or hate it. There was some games in the middle of the split where EMENES was absolutely crushing on the Jayce picks. They've also flexed it up to the top side for Fudge, who has had great performances. But just last weekend, EMENES set the single game death record on Jayce. To be fair, some of those were kind of worthless at the end where he was charging out of fountain and willing to die again. I appreciate that he's not a KDA player, but he did not have great Jayce games at the end of last week. Palafox also had an incredible Jayce game, so I do think it's a situation where it's both a pick for C9 that does work well when they're playing well, but also is a takeaway from CLG.
And instead, with that takeaway happening on the side of Cloud9, CLG bringing in a classic for Palafox in the mid lane with Sylas.
Sylas is interesting. It's fallen out of the meta a little bit, but with the Maokai locked away, people always talk about Sylas's win rate when playing against Maokai, getting one of the strongest teamfight ultimates in the game to be able to seal that one away. But it is something that can struggle a little bit in the mid lane. We'll have to see if that Jayce stays mid, how Palafox can actually pilot against it.
Both of these squads reverting to picks that have played well for them, particularly in the early stages of the split, and now kind of bringing it full circle with that response to the Maokai being locked in for Cloud9. But bans coming through for the final moments of the ban portion of the draft, and of course we're still looking for a support on the side of Cloud9, as well as some additional bot lane action for Luger and Poome.
Yeah, slightly mismatched where CLG have grabbed their soul lanes early. C9 have a lot of flexibility other than the Maokai, which technically can be flexed around, but that's really the only thing that you know for sure is this jungle matchup. The Maokai taken into the Wukong to help lock him down when he tries to go in. Very annoying for Wukong to get on top of the back line, which is what he's so good at usually. And yeah, not surprised to see the Cho'Gath counterpick banned away from the Sion, something that's been very powerful this split.
And that was a pick that even before some of the changes came through in patches, you saw in the NACL, for instance, that counter pick being picked up, and then some additional strength offered to Cho'Gath to offset that Sion. So now banned away, so Cloud9 cannot bring that into this matchup. And Dhokla being serviced with that tank pick from the top lane that has worked well for the teams that have made it into playoffs.
Yeah, I think the top lane matchup is one that we haven't touched on too much, but both Fudge and Dhokla are players with enough flexibility, it feels like, to be two of the premier carry players in the LCS. I think people like Impact and Someday tend to lean a little bit more on the tank and weak side portion of their play. But for Fudge and Dhokla, they're both willing to slam down those carries, the Fioras, the Aurelias, these kinds of things that will make this a interesting matchup to see how it evolves. Right now, it's leaning towards the tank side, and we'll see if that's something where CLG has some extra wrinkles in their game plan, because they are going all in on the Luger train, which has been quite good for them at times this split.
When we're talking collectively about CLG, a lot of it is on Contractz, or when you have those big standout games from Dhokla when he does take those carries up top. But for the longest time, since bringing Luger and Poome into the CLG fold, they have been a focus, building upon the synergy they established when they were under the 100 Thieves banner, and now in the playoff contention that they're offering against Cloud9.
Yep, I saw them hovering it. Actually going to go for the Yone here, the counter pick coming in. We'll have to see where they end up putting that one. I assume that's going into the top lane. but we'll see if it's actually mid battle for him. And of course, they were hovering the Renata for Zven. That would very much align with their pushing bot lane identity, double range, a lot of early power combined with the Varus, but instead it's the Heimerdinger coming back in. We've seen it resurge a little bit at the end of the season, and this is one of those extremely annoying bot laners who just gets prio the entire time, shoves you in, harasses you out, and gives Blaber the space to make plays around the bot lane.
As soon as Heimerdinger started coming back into the meta, you saw him popping up on that ban block, very reminiscent of the peaks during the previous season. But Cloud9 and CLG, when looking at the draft in its entirety, I think will have a very intriguing journey going from draft to draft because they are very different in the ways that they can put their win conditions. What do you think of the way they've indexed in this particular game?
I love both these drafts. They're both a little crazy, but in a good way. Like for C9, obviously, they have been playing with prio all split long. Looks like the Jayce is actually going to Fudge's hands here, and we'll get the melee versus melee skill matchup in the mid lane.
So this game number 1, Mark, is very much going to set a tone, I feel like, for what kind of day we are in for. Whether it's Cloud9 saying, we are the top seed, we won the tiebreaker, we love running over the early game, or if it's Cloud9 proving that scrappiness that they have executed upon in the past.
I think it's super interesting, like you're saying, both because CLG has been a very inconsistent team over the course of the split, and that might come through here where I think there's some games where they might steamroll, get steamrolled, and the next game's totally different. Who can say exactly? But I also think on a strategic level, like you're saying, this is that early game that you see out of C9 going up against the late game of CLG, and CLG does have the ability, if this game falls flat in its face, to later flip that script. And so I like this approach in a game 1 of a 5-game series, coming out with a very specific draft identity, but knowing that you have other things you can do depending on how this one goes.
And kind of on that note of CLG, what they're going to be bringing to the table and indexing into these tools that can flip things on later, I loved hearing from different players in certain interviews going into this, which I will dive into in a bit. For now, though, we got some live primetime action with the coaches standing by.
Thank you very much. I'm here with Mithy, head coach of Cloud9. How do you feel about the draft for game 1?
I think it should be good. Have prio on most lanes and good AP/AD spread, good damage against tanks, and they're running into us, and we have good champions when they run into us, so.
Yeah, the biggest question we had when we were watching the draft was the Jayce and whether that was going to be going top or mid. How was that conversation panning out? Did it depend on the 4-5 bans?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like it's just a flex pick. It's a pretty strong champion these days, so we just kind of decide and build around what they do. So, yeah, I think this game, Gore Drinker Jayce is pretty strong. So,
what does winning look like for this draft? How many lanes have to win for you to actually feel like you're comfortable in the game?
I think the only real way things get out of control is if we don't really have vision and then they just come from all angles, or they're like the Sion is really far ahead or something. But I feel like I don't really see the issue, really. I think we have enough like vision control with saplings and towers and stuff that shouldn't really happen.
All right, thank you very much. Good luck in the rest of the series.
Thank you.
Very interesting little tidbit there. Tilting his hand on what the Jayce is expected to build instead of going the Eclipse, going for a potentially Gore Drinker. It's the second most built mythic on him, and in a very engaged, heavy short-range team from CLG, it could actually be a good pickup, but he's getting targeted early.
Has to flash out of the vicinity, but sees multiple members of CLG on his tail. Fudge waiting for the last hits. Blaber here to try and offer some assistance with some lockdown thrown on saplings going in. The charge up from Dhokla cannot connect with
EMENES?
Fudge, and EMENES looking for the angle, looking to collapse. The root onto one from Blaber. EMENES slinging on in there, hitting away with the Q, and what it do? First blood for Fudge.
Cloud9 showing that they are a little bit more coordinated as a team. EMENES with the early prio that he has against Sylas, able to move up to the top lane and collapse on that long play. I thought when Fudge flashed forward, that was a disaster waiting to happen, but he held his hammer form E until he got back on the right side here. This was so well played by him. Flash out of the queue. Initially, I'm like, okay, this looks doomed. I don't know why you flashed in that direction. Even with Blaber coming in from the river, I didn't think it would be enough, but had that E there to knock him back after Contractz flashed in, buys him the time to be able to get back on top of them. Blaber gets this slow knock back, and then because EMENES, this play was so slow developing, he had time to move all the way from the mid lane up here and get this kill onto Dhokla.
When talking about how Cloud9 has strength in this top side because of what Fudge can do as a player on aggressive picks, on more team-oriented picks, part of that conversation is the way Blaber and the rest of the teams respond. Oh, Fudge right across mid-side, though, running into some danger once again. The kill thrown back to CLG.
God, this is going to be a good series. I feel it already, that both teams so proactive here. I was about to comment on the fact that C9, with these flexible lanes and the flexibility of their players, the fact that Fudge actually played mid last split, that he was going to stay mid on the Jayce here, I thought that was really intelligent. But CLG, no. Hey, he has no flash. They're trying to hide the flashless Jayce from the long lane topside, and so they put him mid, and CLG instantly goes, we don't care if it's a shorter lane, we're still going to attack and kill you.
Just the scrap that we're getting right off the top, Mark. Definitely looking forward to how this evolves throughout the game. I mean, one thing to consider is Cloud9 very much wanting to index into some of that early pressure, so CLG are able to offset that with some action of their own right across mid as Palafox falling low. Then that's where the pressure lies on them to be able to uphold a good stance against the aggression. Poome getting marked down. It's all across the map.
Yeah, just scrapping everywhere, very hard to keep pace, but it is a situation where Palafox, with his TP advantage, that EMENES had to use that after roaming top, can kind of sustain some of these trades, just sit under his turret. This is how Sylas usually plays the melee versus melee matchups early on. He doesn't actually have the power to usually win 1v1s, and so you're focused more on surviving. Luger, able to get out there. But yeah, I really like how CLG has kind of attacked this, because even though Fudge got that first blood, he actually fell behind in CS because he then went mid, then got killed again. He was out of lane for a little bit of time. He is catching it up now as Dhokla does take his first recall. So he's going to be A-okay, but it is a gold lead that was very easily closed back out. You know, C9 is expected to get a gold lead with this comp. It's a question of how much do you need when you start hitting the 15-20 minute mark and team fights start coming in that you can actually still beat CLG.
Because they know how to swing that gold lead around once they do establish it. So good on CLG to try and offset some of that momentum building for the side of Cloud9. But as we expect, having that melee across mid lane, so getting some bow back and forth here. Zven on the Heimerdinger will be executing as much as possible along Berserker to keep the pressure up on Poome and Luger. Poome very much indexing into a pick that will offer a lot in that CC later on in the game.
That's just one of those horribly annoying lanes to play against. There's just projectiles flying at your head every second. There's turrets being thrown down. Varus E and Q, the Heimerdinger E and W, just always having to dodge out, keep your footwork good, and it's a matchup where if you can actually dodge out a lot of that damage, you can survive it and keep that CS up. They're down about 10 right now on the Zeri. I wouldn't be surprised to see him fall down a little bit more, but you should have the scaling advantage in theory.
Yeah, because in the end, no major gold lead is established thus far, just at the 250 mark for Cloud9. This prio over on the bot side, though, does mean some pressure on the Dragon right now for Blaber as Zven and Berserker keep up the poke.
Not a surprise at all to see them transition this early bot pressure into the Dragon, like we're kind of calling out. It's something that C9 has been very good about doing. You know, even if they're not getting all the kills that they want or the lanes aren't getting solo kills, the fact that they draft this high tempo style allows them to then go start snowballing neutral objectives. And Blaber has been one of the least proactive junglers in the LCS. He's been a little bit better in the second half of the season playing with EMENES, but the team does use his efficient style to focus more on clearing camps, and with the changes to the counter jungle, that's a buff to Blaber's style, and it's very much about getting these kinds of leads and him being at the right place at the right time to counter gank rather than blow leads open.
Exactly. Fudge MVP, I thought he was good. On that point, something that you were all discussing on the dive, and I know that Jat was saying specifically how part of Blaber's efficiency comes from the threat that he offers as jungler, someone who is always able to keep up that pressure in the enemy jungle, in the lanes, where CLG are forced to respond to the looming threat that he constantly poses.
Exactly. I mean, look at this vision line that you have from the side of C9 here. There's no idea exactly where Blaber could be in the entire bot side of the map. You can see assist me pings because they're not exactly sure where he is. It's very hard to get advanced vision to spot Blaber out when you're playing with this much prio in every lane like C9 likes to do. And that speaks to Jat's point about, like, well, Blaber could be anywhere and you just assume he's always there because he's so smart.
Which means because of that pressure just through sheer vision, they're able to offer on that bot side after taking that Dragon. Blaber can be here on the top side to try to make the pay. Palafox going in onto it on Blaber, though, is stunned away. And a double knock-up. EMENES over the wall. He goes. Multiple ults utilized. Contractz burn on down. Palafox soon to follow. Ends up flashing out of it. Fudge getting a channel over here onto Dhokla, who wants to escape, but it's a split up of the fight. Multiple lives lost. The 2-for-1 trade as CLG go on the retreat.
dangerous to try and fight C9 early at these neutral objectives with the power of their comp. It was a cool idea to try and hop on Blaber and kind of cut the play by getting a 2-on-1 on him before the rest of C9 showed up, but it was just a little too slow to finish off Blaber. You can see here he's kind of caught in the river, and they're saying we can get a pincer on him, especially with stealing the Maokai ultimate, but it takes a little bit too long to lock him down. That gives time for EMENES to get in range. Zven is also already on the move. The fact that they were not quite able to finish him off quickly, and I like that C9 kind of played this slow, both Blaber and EMENES trading off who was being focused down at different points in time until Zven could finally show up. Poome shows up as well, but just a little bit too late, because also during this time, Fudge was kind of winning that trade in the river against Dhokla and forced him back. So, you know, there was no chance for CLG to realistically win that fight after they committed.
The responsiveness of the members of Cloud9 are so dangerous in those moments. That bit of a delay in the potential lockdown on Blaber, enough time for the rest of Cloud9 to respond, and now this grabbing the Rift Herald as a result of that previous 1-for-2 skirmish, and 1.1k gold lead for Cloud9 as they approach 10 minutes. Poome right here with Blaber has Luger over the side to make an escape.
He was trying to bait the Blaber W on top of him and then E back over the wall to pull him over, maybe deeper than Blaber wanted to go. Blaber too smart to fall for that play though. A cute little move, but already bot laners moving into the mid lane. Both teams have very good 1-3-1 options, and kind of going into that at 10 minutes into the game, potentially trying to set up a good angle for a roam with the prio that they should get mid lane down to one of these side lanes. You drop a Rift Herald. It's kind of the same way you would often try and get mid prio and then make that play happen when your bot lanes are actually bot lane, but a little bit easier to make happen potentially with how strong Varus Heimer is. See, they can just always clear these waves instantly.
And looking at some of the potential strength on the other side, one of the members in the most danger, Palafox right now, is the one holding 2 kills, is the one building in to be a threat later, but sees that Cloud9 are ready to collapse upon him if necessary.
Yeah, I think they're calling this one out because they lost sight of Poome, and Dhokla does have his teleport back available. It's something that could easily turn to a very scrappy fight, but that's exactly the play that I was highlighting, that C9 is going to threaten over and over and over again, and eventually you hope that you can get enough advanced warning to know that there's an actual strong side of the map for you there. They backed off there, but they still get a blue buff seal out of it, so a very successful usage of this tempo that they have. It's really, really good stuff to see. It's somewhat bread and butter in competitive League of Legends to be able to use your mid prio to take over a side of the map, but a lot of teams still struggle with syncing up all their players, and C9 have been so in sync this entire split.
Very much leans into the idea that junglers and mid laners need to be on the same page on a team, so there's so much more emphasis when Blaber was specifically calling for EMENES to join this squad and be able to execute that pressure and throw it across the map.
It's his preferred playstyle. We all know that Blaber, at his best, is playing Udyrs, Hekarims, Olafs. He's running in your face. He's murdering you over and over again. And that's hard to do if you don't have pressure in the mid lane, or at least someone who's willing to scrap out with you. And EMENES definitely brings that more aggressive playstyle. It's what I'm sure attracted him to EMENES when they had that kind of conversation about what's gone on. They're both pretty blunt people. It sounds like they just, you know, Blaber just asked straight up, what's up with the rumors around your toxicity, you know, and they just hashed it out and realized that this was someone that saw the game the same way. And you can see that has helped transform the team in how they approach with this super high tempo style.
Yeah, there's so many pieces of content where EMENES has been asked exactly that, but still maintains a lot of levity and good synergy both on the Rift and off of it with the rest of Cloud9 as they drop this Rift Herald across mid. Very great place and very standard to be able to drop it, especially ahead of this dragon as the fight starts to flake out. Contractz going in, and Maokai throwing the ultimate in response. A charm onto one, and the laser coming through for Zven, so he has to flash out of it. And off from the side, Berserker's getting the damage down. One hail to get the kill onto Poome, and Contractz has way too many blue lines on the pursuit of his own body, separating him from the fight. It's the 1-for-double trade again, but Cloud9 executing well.
Cloud9 able to survive that initial engage by CLG. The fact that Palafox with the stolen Yone ultimate means that there was not quite enough damage to insta-kill Blaber yet again. The second time they tried to target him out early. Blaber does end up dropping, which slows this dragon takedown. So we'll see if both teams end up resetting. Contractz will be up soon, and they might fight again. They did get a lot of chip damage with that Rift Herald charge. They tried to drop that early to get, you know, this kind of inward path from mid lane to the river, and they had it, but Blaber was a little bit ahead of the rest of the team here, and if he can actually land that with a very nice W untargetability onto the Rift Scuttle Crab to get out of Palafox's engage there, meant that Blaber lived long enough that it gave C9 time to turn around. They blow Poome up, and Contractz does finish the kill off, but he's isolated from the rest of his team to make that play happen.
And in the end, it was enough of a scrap to end the play around Dragon, whichever team that ends up falling better for when the engage comes around the next time. About to get past that 14-minute mark. So Cloud9 previously at 2K, now to 1.5. Got some decent plates off of mid with that drop from the plates before they fall. And now get a little bit of a reset.
Yeah, you can see it's interesting that they went back for lane assignments actually instead of just rushing straight back down to the Dragon. I thought it was going to be an instant reset. Instead, they try and get the wave shoving again before they do it. But Palafox in some trouble here.
Wanted to find a moment to push this up, but now flashing in response to EMENES, going in with the ultimate, but Blaber again here to lock him down. The lock with the golden, but Palafox can't get to Poome quick enough until the final blow comes from EMENES, and Poome, the sacrifice to follow for Cloud9. Getting the victory in that engage.
Oh, Palafox just stepping a little bit too far forward in lane. C9 with the inside trap from River, cut him off. That's 2 kills. Luger wants something though.
Trying to get something here. EMENES falling pretty low to the lathering bolts of Luger, so a pick-up kill from CLG while Cloud9 take their second Drake of the game.
Good of them to find a cleanup kill there and stop the pressure from the bot side. Of course, Berserker will shove in mid lane, grab this first turret of the game. During this time, though, you saw Contractz focused up on this top side with Dhokla, forced Fudge out of the lane. They're going to trade a turret back. So a 2,000 gold lead right at 15 minutes for C9. Not a bad spot to be in for their comp, but they're not 100% out of the woods yet. Unfortunately, the Dragon stacking it isn't in their favor.
Dragon stacking and most gold into Berserker's pocket right now for Cloud9.
Shocker. Always seems
surprise.
to be ahead, yeah. We see an Anathema's Chains pick up by Blaber here. This was something that, watching it last series and always watching Inspired as an Anathema Chains enthusiast, I was just amazed at how strong this item is, watching Doublelift try and play through it. And it's something where I expect this item to be picked up a lot more as playoffs go on. And we're in these kinds of games where there's one major threat that you're most concerned about here. It's the Zeri. I assume that's who he's going to attach it onto. Yes, of course, there's other people that dive on, but if you can lock down the Zeri insta-killer at the start of fights, it's very hard for CLG to win. So I have been converted. I am very hot on Anathema's Chains.
Definitely gets more value when it comes to exactly what you were saying. A lot of these comps just having that single target that you really need to remove right off the bat for the most damage. Blaber getting caught right here in the line bush though, the responding rune, but ends up falling to the hand of Palafox. So CLG around this second Rift Herald should be able to pick it up.
They've tried 3 times around neutral objectives in a row to cut the play off, kill Blaber early. They finally execute on that play. Absolutely massive to get his kill there because it allows them to grab this Rift Herald. As we see, Palafox in some trouble.
The play made on the opposite side. Palafox's sacrifice for the rest of the team focusing that Rift Herald.
C9 are just so fast-paced. As soon as they realize that there's no way to fight this Rift Herald, they're instantly down on the other side of the map. EMENES had teleport to contest that Rift Herald if they needed to. Realizing that they can't do it, Berserker actually moves down to the bot lane to find an early kill on him. Very well done.
Pressure here across mid. The Herald pretty quickly dropped after grabbing it to get that charge across mid. They knew it would take a little bit of time for Cloud9 to potentially respond.
Yeah, feels like a bit of a mistake though. I think they thought that they had the numbers advantage mid to instantly take that turret down, but Jayce, and Zven, and they were just able to get enough damage down to CLG that they actually couldn't push.
A lot of it is because of Cloud9's swiftness and not just responding to make that play down bot, but really be in tune with one another. Every time there's a VOD review, every time we get to hear that insight of how Cloud9 executes, it never feels like a mistake or an accident for them to be where they are. They're always thinking a few steps ahead, as was made clear in those moments. But CLG, even though they're dropping that down pretty quickly, they do still get the charge. They do still get some value from that Rift Herald.
Yeah, it's a little bit of value, but I think from their position down this gold, any way that you can get this injection would be huge to just keep you in punching distance of C9, and you don't realistically need chip damage, so it does feel like a little bit of a wasted opportunity there, but I think that just speaks to C9's defense being very good, and they're instantly back on the map making plays.
Oh, following over the wall onto Poome, who has to get out of there as quickly as possible towards the turret. Dhokla now the subject of the gaze of Fudge and the rest of Cloud9, but enough of a wave and more. Poome getting out of there enough with the ultimate.
The rest of C9 is stacking in the brush though. CLG is bringing reinforcements, Palafox moving in. It'll be hard for them to fully defend this. Even if they can group up, it's still probably going to get knocked down by the range and chip damage of C9. See if Fudge and them try, or might actually have scared them off.
A lot of fight over vision there, and Cloud9 making sure to keep their controls at the ready so that Dhokla and the rest of CLG have difficulty pushing up from that position. And also worth noting as we see these rotations across the map, EMENES with a bit more freedom to do so with a teleport. Still a bit of time before Palafox's comes on through.
Yeah, Palafox has been getting picked on a little bit this game, but he's someone who has... there's been a number of players on CLG who people have debated who should get the All-Pro nod. The fact that they got none, you heard talked about in the Analyst Desk, despite being the 4th place team in the LCS. It's like they really didn't have anyone who was top 3 in their role. And I think Palafox was one that a lot of people in the community had identified as someone who was very important in CLG's wins, maybe one of the more consistent members, as Poome is deep behind enemy lines. Doesn't know it yet.
Whoop, sees one enemy, sees another coming soon, over the wall, and EMENES coming through with the ultimate. A little too much red in his eyes as soon as he hops on over.
It was a cute idea, but ultimately not able to find the kill there. A little bit of pressure, but because he lost his ultimate and committed it there, I don't think CLG are too worried about this from here. And Palafox can keep trying to scale up. We talked about the scaling of Sylas being quite strong. It's just going to get better as they keep getting the ultimate stolen from Maokai. Now above level 11. Going to be very scary in this team fight coming up around the Chemtech Dragon.
Yeah, setting up for it, 5 seconds to go before it spawns, and Cloud9 getting their sweepers and warding at the ready. Teleport in from CLG's side.
Oh boy.
To ensure that Dhokla can engage if necessary.
A lot of flanks.
Cloud9 starting up onto the Dragon. They know that Poome is here, and EMENES wants to zone him off. Fudge coming through as well. There's the ultimate from Blaber, the stun and more, and the knockback onto Dhokla and the squad. Berserker getting marked so low by Contractz, though. Contractz isolating the target very effectively. Cloud9, no one here to make their stand. CLG bullying him out of the pit.
Excellent flanks by CLG coming in from all different directions. There was no ultimate on EMENES, like I was saying. It made it a very difficult fight for C9 to actually look for. And CLG did a good job this game staying within punching distance. Like we said, it was never more than the 2,500 gold lead that allowed them to find this fight. They killed multiple members. Now they're on to Bear, and we'll have to see if the poke from Fudge and EMENES now back with his ultimate, if he can TP in here, maybe stop this.
Needs to get some way of gaining sight over on this Baron play from CLG.
So
EMENES
slow.
here, stepping up to it. Fudge wanting to line, hits the Q back. EMENES goes in, knocks up multiple on the backside. Poome to fall, and Baron goes down, secured by CLG.
Pretty clean escape there by CLG. Got very dicey with a fat ultimate from EMENES, but they only killed Poome. The smite was still alive for Contractz. Ice in his veins, grabs that Baron, and they get out with 4 members alive. So very nicely played there by CLG.
Still a lot of purple for them to work with. It's not just about securing the Baron, it is on the way they were able to exit. So CLG now starting to whittle even more into that gold lead. 1.2K for Cloud9. What are you feeling about where these two teams are standing at this mark?
I think if I'm CLG, I'm feeling great with so many turrets left on the map to get some gold with. Here's that flank that we're talking about. They do such a good job of isolating them right here. Palafox hops the wall, the chain CC. Contractz doesn't get focused down on the rest of the team. He actually makes sure he gets onto Berserker and finishes him off. Meanwhile, EMENES and Fudge were just not grouped up and didn't have a way to contribute to that team fight. So just very split focus there.
Oh, and coming back into it.
Oh, Zven immediately jumped on again.
Was going through the jungle, and too many of CLG there to punish. So Cloud9 currently at the loss of their support, but CLG really stepping into the driver's seat on this one and still have over a minute and a half to work with this Baron buff to start picking up some of that standing gold on the map.
Yeah, nice pick off there on Zven, trying to get some vision out. It's very difficult to play Heimerdinger from behind. You have to have very good footwork to avoid just getting blown up because you are so squishy. They are able to grab some of this objective down, but I think C9 did an okay job splitting the map. You saw EMENES forced Dhokla up there to grab that, but here we go, getting some gold back in their pocket. Gold lead close to even with a scaling advantage in CLG's pocket. The Dragon stacking also has been stopped. The fact that they were able to get that Chemtech is huge because otherwise you might be looking at soul point for C9. So CLG are feeling great. Obviously understand how their team wants to team fight from here.
I imagine this was a big turning point for them, being able to gain a lot of confidence in what this comp is supposed to bring to the table and preparing for the team fights ahead where things will feel much more even-keeled than some of their earlier engaged attempts by Cloud9.
And I think it's what makes CLG so impressive as a team is even when they take scaling options, that doesn't make them passive in the early game. We saw 3 straight objective fights. They tried to pick off Blaber at the start of them. It didn't always work. It was a little scary because that is giving a little extra gold. I think a lot of people see the risk reward there and say, oh, well, if we just don't fight them, they can't get any kills at this neutral objective. But CLG is saying, well, if we kill them, it stops their stacking even faster. Their snowball gets shut off even faster. And so I appreciate that CLG, even when they have scaling in their favor, doesn't just let off the gas completely. And you can see finally they landed the fight that worked for them, and now they're in complete control of this game.
Looking to land another fight. Palafox having the stolen ultimate from Berserker does not connect, but Cloud9 feeling more and more pressure, so they feel the need to turn this back onto Dhokla, who uses the unstoppable onslaught to get the heck on out of there back into the riverside. Fudge now isolated by Poome and Contractz. Look how fast that burn down is getting easier and easier to kill off members like Fudge.
CLG looked like they were done making plays after the Palafox stolen Varus ultimate whiff. They forced Dhokla back. Fudge is trying to rotate, but the extra distance from the Chemtech blast cones gave Poome and Contractz the range they needed to find that kill. That also gives them pressure now to keep chipping down this mid turret.
After giving plenty of props to Cloud9 for their responsiveness across the map, got to give it to CLG as well. The reach there from EMENES cannot prolong for long enough to get Dhokla out of there, but yeah, CLG completely eliminating the gold lead that C9 had established.
Oh my god, EMENES is relentless.
Again, yeah, says I'm gonna get this on take 2. Still slamming away onto Dhokla, eventually slings on back.
I wonder if Dhokla will try and recall in lane 10 feet away again. Looks like it.
I wonder.
My brother, please walk further back.
Will he? Oh,
okay, he's out.
Okay.
If EMENES just continued running forward, he would have caught him out there. A little cute interaction between the two of them. But yeah, CLG's still feeling good. I think the thing that really makes their team comp so good in the mid to late games is the stability of it. The fact that C9 has a lot of damage that actually continues to scale through the game. Obviously, Jayce is no joke late game. Yone is no joke late game. Even a Varus can contribute quite a bit. And so if C9 can find a good angle where CLG fails and engage, they can still win these team fights. But the problem is there's so much engage, there's so many people who can get exploded on C9 side that just any one of these abilities lands, whether it's Poome or Contractz or Dhokla or even Palafox with a stolen Maokai ultimate. There's so many ways to lock down the squishy members of C9. They're still going to take this fight.
We're starting to see inklings of it, and maybe CLG will throw down that lockdown in this fight over the Dragon. Already burned below 4, but going to get reset here. Cloud9 continued to hover around the river. They have to be worried about those flanks that CLG had executed on previously. Contractz looking for a similar angle, wants to find Berserker again, gets a knock-up onto Berserker and Zven, but the rest of the team getting charmed and locked up around the Dragon side. It's Contractz this time that's the first to fall, so Cloud9 get the chance to wrap it around for another Dragon of their own.
C9 had such a better setup that time in the Dragon Pit. They had wards all over the wall. They had EMENES hopping over walls to force Palafox back, and it ends up in a situation where only Contractz is alone on the back line. They did a good enough job stuffing the engage that C9 could focus him down, get the kill, and then grab the objective.
And it is those similar ideas as the previous fight, but those differences. A bit better warning for Cloud9 this time. Not as much support on the lockdown onto Berserker from Contractz and the rest of CLG, and this time going over in the blue side favor.
Yeah, I think this is what makes C9 a very scary team, is that they adapt in the game. They don't just try the same thing over and over again and hit their head against the wall. They learn from their mistakes. Last time we gave them way too many angles. We weren't grouped up. Here they did a really good job of getting everyone in the same position to actually fight, kind of front to back. And it was so well fought, actually, that Berserker didn't even have to blow his flash. These are still up for the next time that they actually have to square off, because that's one of the huge cooldowns that CLG needs to be tracking, is if we can force the flashes out of the squishy members of their backline, it's a lot easier to finish them off.
We might be approaching another opportunity for these teams to come head-to-head on the Rift. EMENES just going and getting some intel to sling on forward to see how many members of CLG are lurking. And those adaptations are so clear, because even when things did work out for Cloud9 in the earlier moments, a lot of times Blaber was the first executed. He gets out that Nature's Grasp right before falling, and it's just enough. And then now being positioned in a way where CLG's focus on taking down the jungler around these objectives isn't as much as a viable opportunity. Can't capitalize on the burn down on Berserker quick enough, and things are still close.
Yeah, things are very close. The fact that they got that Dragon does turn the option for Soul Point back in their favor to keep kind of the scaling closer between the two teams. And C9 grabbed the gold lead back as well. The fact that they never broke that mid turret with a Baron feels pretty bad on the side of CLG. They are a very short-range comp, so it is hard to actually siege down. And they do a good job finding picks and jungles, but they really need to actually start finding ways to grab objectives. Palafox starting to hurt.
Yeah, getting a decent chunk out of Blaber there, but since it was only a couple members of CLG, they don't want to commit to anything there just yet. Kind of see that Cloud9 are continuing to establish their vision around this mid side. Contractz a bit worried about who might be lurking beyond that bush.
Still forces the ultimate out. He saw the soul untethered and knew where the snap pack was going to go to, so he just stealths up on top of him. You know, EMENES doesn't know exactly how many people are around, has to burn the ultimate defensively, relieve some pressure from CLG here as C9 is starting to set up their Baron control.
And for Cloud9, Fudge does have that teleport available down for everyone else, soon to come back up for Palafox, but he's already in the vicinity on this top side with Baron up. Next major objective to be fought over, but so much of it has been who finds the better flank angles, and it's difficult from the current positioning.
I think this is mostly just posturing from the side of C9. They realistically don't want to start Baron 5v5 alive with how squishy they are, the flank concerns like you're talking about. This is mostly to corral CLG, posture enough to make them have to respect it. If they misstep, maybe you land some poke and you can actually get a kill, but it's mostly about controlling the next 2 minutes of the game until the dragon spawns, and then you can actually go for that win condition because it's a lot easier and lower risk to push onto that as opposed to onto the Baron.
Yep, exactly right. There's nothing currently pulling to the opposite side of the map and having those neutrals up. When you are the team for Cloud9 on Soul Point, there's much more of a threat that you offer when trying to go for that dragon in a minute and a half or so into the future. But CLG also posturing up on their own mark, pushing the waves back across mid, made sure to be moving as units throughout the jungle so they didn't get locked down by Blaber or any of Cloud9 members. You still have to be worried about the sapling setups and the like around these objectives.
Yeah, it's a very annoying comp to kind of face check into, both the poke from Varus, the saplings, like you said, the poke from Jayce, even Heimerdinger dropping turrets, and you have to kind of face check and clear them. It is a team where if C9 gets set up first, there's a lot of work that CLG has to do to get into position. It's also why flanks are so powerful, because you don't have to just face check through all of that. But C9 has done a very good job of kind of wrestling control back after that initial Baron attempt. They're again a minute ahead of time, flipping that control from the Baron side to the Dragon side, getting their wards down, getting these turrets down, and making it so that CLG is going to have to fight through a couple different choke points to actually make it happen. CLG saying, screw that, we're going to flip you for Baron potentially, and that's another valuable option that you can have is, you know, is your scaling good enough that you can give them Soul Point or a Baron and just get some more gold back in your pocket? C9 are kind of respecting it.
Now draw out the teleport from EMENES to get here quickly, in case CLG do want to go for this posturing around Baron or try to get a collapse play upon Cloud9. Still going for that fight over vision here, as everyone from CLG are ready to find the angle, get a decent little poke onto Blaber, but nobody overstepping just yet.
No one overstepping just yet. Dragon has not yet spawned. We'll see exactly how much C9 are going to react to this Baron threat. CLG deciding to finally start it. C9 walking into River.
And EMENES zoning off Palafox, who's trying to find the angle through the jungle, but Cloud9, I think they're just looking at the way CLG is poking off on this. There's no true commitment just yet, looking on who's going to usher the start of this fight first. Palafox losing about 40% of his HP, same with Dhokla, so they have to wrap around the pit.
This is huge for C9. The fact they poked CLG off, CLG was kind of spotted the entire way. They didn't have a good flank angle, and C9 leaked out EMENES at the start of this to actually just take the soul by himself. Great macro out of Cloud9.
And now Cloud9, fourth dragon to their name, Chemtech Soul acquired. Much more pressure they can offer against CLG after really posturing so they could get that objective and just take it away.
This is such a cool game. The first 15 minutes was bloodshed, insanity, fighting all over the place. It slowed down a lot when C9 realized CLG were matching them beat for beat in the bloodshed angle, and so they go for a lot more control focus, and it's about getting these setups around these neutral objectives and just outwitting your opponent, having good lane assignments, and now they are monstrously ahead in terms of effective gold with the extra soul in their pocket, all the stacks, the fact that you also have just a gold lead on its own. Map control, C9 are looking good in game one right now.
A fighting game for the first half, and a bit more of a tactics game for the second half here.
Yeah, I'm not going to tip my hand too much, which one I enjoy more, but if they wanted to get some more team fights, I wouldn't complain.
I wouldn't complain about, you know, some of that infuse me with what coffee would do. Oh, going in. There's some action right there. Immediate burn down of Poome. Let's see what Cloud9 could end up doing with this one. EMENES going in. The channel from Dhokla, if he did remain too long, but Cloud9 decide to start up this Baron. 3 members onto it. Look at that burn, baby, burn. CLG can't do nothing in the 4v5, so they give up the purple crown to Cloud9.
Nice pick off by C9 there. Poome has been looking for these angles all game long and had been a couple of close encounters, but finally C9 finds him and early enough kill him. And without that extra engage, CLG is just saying, we don't have enough tools to realistically win this fight. So they back off, they give the Baron away. But it's really scary against how poke heavy this team comp is. The only real way to defend these turrets and stuff is going to be for CLG to find an angle to engage, because the range is so heavily in C9's favor here. Once Poome's back up, now that he's here, they're going to have to find a way to actually stop a push through an engage.
Gotta be worried about the vulnerability of those melees on CLG as soon as Cloud9 comes and knocking. They've still got over 2 minutes to work with on this buff, so getting a chance to get back and then reset into these lanes to get some of these waves pushing up. You can see Fudge ushering over on that bot side. Some deeper wards from CLG that still have them somewhat covered, but you have to be wary of Berserker going along Blaber here throughout the jungle to change that.
Yeah, you can see CLG not even trying to cut through the jungle, knowing how much damage there is on the side of C9, sitting in lane and kind of waiting for them. That means that, of course, you're just going straight front to back. There's none of these flanks, so they're doing their best to clear these waves. C9 keeping the pressure up. EMENES staying mid lane. He's alone in that lane right now, so while they'll defend this inner bot lane turret, they're going to lose an inhibitor for the sake of it.
And going for the lockdown from Blaber just to keep CLG here. Multiple knots from Poome into the back. CLG blasting around. They take 2, make that 3. Coming in hot on the bot push.
C9 are split pushing, and Dhokla baits them into thinking that they can actually go for that engage. Poome finds the monstrous 3-man engage, annihilates them. Fudge caught out a little bit here.
Whew. Contractz popping the watch. Fudge just wanting to buy time to get to safety. Doesn't have a turret here at the tier 2. Does blast down Contractz though. Now Poome and Luger can't stand up to Fudge.
Fudge destroying Contractz, who in that chase down sequence, there's actually no armor bought by Contractz. He's just relying on his passive there, and so Fudge just absolutely annihilates him.
And on this, saying that Poome and Luger, you already lost out on that battle against Fudge. Do not come into my jungle. EMENES picking up a buff here, but CLG, that was quite swingy, just making the play happen there with that massive engage, and then a little bit of a chase down after.
Yeah, really nice by CLG to stop that push. The gold lead hasn't changed very much. You can see the Baron buff power play is 150 only, but they did get more map control because during the sequence, EMENES was pushing mid, but Poome, the monstrous 3-man engage, everyone immediately following up. Dhokla's ultimate, you saw the Zeri W coming in over the top, Contractz getting the knock up. A nice quick 3 kills. Overextending a little bit for trying to finish off Fudge. Finally, Contractz has some armor. I think he just straight up bought GA off just stopwatch. So nice to get some more defenses for him there, knowing that there is a lot of physical damage on the side of C9.
And C9 definitely looking to throw that physical damage at these turrets, and more Palafox. Oh,
Whoa.
That's that damage. That's that big boom that C9 are offering right now.
God, EMENES is strong. 4-1-4, claps Palafox up, not even close, took almost no damage with the shield from the Bloodthirster coming in. And now without Palafox here, it's very difficult for CLG to survive. The Baron has timed out, fortunately for them, but C9 have complete control of the spot side of the map.
They were able to get that inhibitor with EMENES pushing on that mid side prior, and now finally taking down the tier 2. So as Super's coming along for the support across mid, and then the entirety of Cloud9 across bot, they don't look to give up this pressure. Another ultimate engage from Blaber, and it's just right now at the start, and EMENES into the backline. Poome activated the quickness, but is on the retreat towards the fountain. CLG, they don't have a mid laner. They don't have a stance against the taking of this second inhibitor.
EMENES snapbacks have been breaking ankles all game long there. Uses that as a chunk out tool, and then knowing that the enemy team's going to try and punish him, instantly goes back to his original body's position, able to get out, but C9 want to punish.
Dhokla trying to throw it back there and getting the teleport in as well. Decent damage onto EMENES, who now is in the retreat scenario. Palafox getting the ultimate thrown down in the root, so Berserker has fallen. Cloud9 lacking some of their damage, and with no one to really stand in front of them, the rest of CLG just keep on backing.
Berserker's dead though, and Elder is spawning in 10 seconds. CLG are going to brute force down. It's very fortunate for C9 that they were able to get out there without losing more people. They do have an ultimate advantage now in this standoff, so even though they don't have their AD carry, they might be able to fend off CLG, who have to also worry about the super creeps pushing in the mid lane.
And Dhokla's going to have to spend a little bit of time there just to be able to clear those out before he can join. The rest of CLG does have the teleport to do so. But Cloud9 waiting on EMENES to be able to rejoin them. Poome was looking for the flank angle, has to get over the wall and flash away. EMENES still looking, could not connect to get the collapse onto CLG's support, but it's CLG focusing onto the Elder. Another ultimate, this time thrown back by Palafox. Gets the root onto Blaber, but they're keeping their eyes on Dhokla. EMENES going in, he gets the chunk, but is the follow-up good from Cloud9? He's going in for the end of the game. That's one turret, that's 2. Who cares about Elder when you got the Nexus in your sights for Cloud9? Cutting into the scrap of CLG. Palafox, can you make the stand against Fudge? What he's got coming for you in the Nexus? A stand for Cloud9, game 1!
play. The rest of them are giving their bodies up in the river to stop recall, so Fudge can end the game in an absolute barn burner first matchup of the series. It's looking like a good one because CLG were hanging in there throughout the entire first game.
Oh, what a way to end that game that, depending on when you were actually watching, did look for a moment, okay, Cloud9, they're doing their control.
They baited, that was so close, they baited the audio guy. He's like pressing the pop-off music. He's like, wait a minute, Palafox got back. It looked very, very close there for a second. C9, all business after that one. I think maybe a little closer than they wanted it to go. A lot of notes still, because I think they realize now that they're gonna be in for a scrappy series after how that first game went.
Yeah, this is very common with what you see on the faces of a team that's expecting to win just because they know how good they are, but it's not as dominating as they were hoping in that game one. But if you're CLG, it's very important to make note of what was going well. The fact that you were holding your own in that early game when Cloud9 was positioning themselves to dominate.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of missteps by both teams that they're going to be easily able to identify. C9, some of these team fights where they didn't get the flanks marked correctly, even though they had great objective setup after that. And for CLG, they didn't use the neutral objectives that they were able to win well enough. We talked about the Rift Herald that they were able to get, not really getting the mid-turret broken down. Then their first Baron push, also not able to break that mid-turret. There's some of these situations where if they could have just got a little bit more influx of gold, a little bit cleaner team fights, maybe they would have been able to win.
There's so much dancing around when we had the Baron and Dragon as possibilities, and how some of the earlier moments when Poome is able to get that great engage and the flanks work out expertly, CLG make the play happen. But when Cloud9 was on top of it and shut it down, then a bit more difficulty to bring it in. But CLG definitely have some tools that they can work with going into the rest of these series. For now, though, everyone remember,